Remove the 10mm nut that holds the airbox on. Loosen the clamp that holds the lower portion of the air intake to the upper portion of the air intake. Remove the air temperature sensor clip from the back of the air temperature sensor. Undo the clamp that holds the coolant lines to remove the air shroud later. Now remove the lower intake portion. Remove the clamp that is connecting the upper intake to the actual throttle body. Remove the 10mm bolt that holds this upper intake box off. On the back side, on the back side of the intake, there is a hose that you have to remove the clamp to release the gases into the intake from the inside engine. Remove the box by just sliding it off. Remove the 5/16 bolt that's holding the clamp of the fuel rail to the intake manifold. And it's a very long bolt. In between the second and third intake, you can see the bolt that holds the fuel rail on, the front one. That's a 10mm bolt, and it is kind of hard to get to, but showing right here is that it's possible to reach it with a regular socket. I used a wobbly one. So on the far end of the intake manifold, right below, you can see where the bracket is, right here. There's a bolt under it that's another 10mm. You can see right here me getting my regular socket on. And if you move the wiring harness on the bottom, that coolant line right there, and pull it all up, you actually can stick your right hand all the way down in and undo the bolt by hand. After that happens, the injectors and the fuel rail should pop out of the cylinder head like that. Now you are removing the clip from the fuel rail and fuel line. Next is to use a fuel rail and fuel line detaching tool to push it in there, so you push the prongs back and be able to pull the fuel rail out of the coupling. And kind of have to move it around a little bit and feel it. You can use screwdrivers to do that, but it's a lot easier with this tool. So you just kind of feel it around and pull it like that. Back here is the clip for the wiring harness that goes to each injector. You can see it's right next to where you remove that exhaust or the crankcase gas tube that goes to the intake. You just pop the one clip off and then separate it. Be careful if you're using a screwdriver so you don't break the clip. Next is to kind of slide all of the injectors out. You kind of have to move it around a little bit. I should have taken the fan shroud off right here to make it a little easier, but I'll take it off a little later. Just make sure you're not catching any wires. Like right there's the wiring harness is being caught. So you notice right here, I'm missing a clip on the injector. So that's probably why mine were leaking, was because it was missing a clip. When you're removing, so you had to pull that clip off, the one that had fallen off, that just slides off. Now what you're doing is pushing these blue locks up from the connectors so that you can pull the wiring harness off the fuel injectors. You can pull the fuel injector out just by wobbling it back and forth. So now that you've removed them all, put the new fuel injector in, like so. Just squeeze it in. Put the clip on. These are GM clips. The clips that were on there were from Amazon, and one of them fell off, so I got correct clips for it. Now, the wiring harness, putting it back on, the front one has a 1 on it if it's a standard wiring harness. If not, it's the longer side of the harness goes to where the bend in the fuel rail is right here. So you see how there's 1, 2, 3 that are in front of the main clip and 1 that's behind. So now you push all the little blue locks back down. And this is, I'm taking off the shroud now, so it's easier for me to put the fuel rail back on. It's just 3 bolts, so 2 on the bottom, 1 on the top on that side, and 2 on the bottom and 1 on top on the other side. And once you remove those bolts, you just pick the coolant lines up and slide it out. Yeah, so this makes there more room for you to be able to wiggle the fuel rail back in. So right here you can see the fuel rail in the hole. It's kind of hard to see, but all you're having to do is get that lined up there, and then you begin to go back through the process of putting the bolt in between these runners on the back, which is kind of hard, but it's doable. Doing the fuel clip harness, reconnecting the fuel rail connector and putting the retaining clip back on, putting the 5/16 bolt holding it back on, putting the upper intake back on, connecting that rear hose, connecting that 10mm bolt, and making sure you're doing all the clamps. Like here, just putting putting everything off like you took it off, or like you took it off. Put everything on like you took it off, and then making sure you put that temperature sensor back in, the clip back on. That's one I always forget. Any questions, please let me know. Thank you.